moving home in 2026. These are 15 things to think about and prepare for. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible to break it down, understand, just to really make your property journey a lot easier, or as easy as it can be, we'll say. Um, because let's face it, we all know this. Moving home is a major life moment. Perry, do they not say something like between getting married and moving house, are they not like the most stressful things that you can
Yeah,
do in your life? Yeah.
marriage, house, babies.
There we go. So we're going to talk about one of those in particular today that we are experts in and we can help you with. The others maybe not so much, because this does require equal parts strategy, a little bit of soul searching, and the key to success lies in how much thought and preparation go into making
Mhm.
such a big decision. We say this all the time. It could be your biggest asset in life or one of your biggest assets in life. So there is a lot that comes with that. So preparation, there is no such thing as being too prepared.
Mm.
Never. So this is a fantastic show for you if you are thinking of moving, or even if you're in the process of moving and you're thinking, have I forgot something? This is going to be your guide. If you need to refer back to it or you want to read over it in your own time, you can click the link. Please do that. It might even be worth, and this is maybe me being old school, perhaps if you can click on it, print it off, and you can tick through the list and work through it as you go. Might be something to do. But whether you're wondering whether to stay put or perhaps improve, how to attract the best buyer and when's the right time to sell, breaking down the process into manageable bite-sized pieces will hopefully help with that overwhelming feeling and keep yourself in check. What
Mm.
would you say, Perry, is the kind of tips that we're going to talk people through?
Oh, I think for me, certainly over the years that we've been involved in selling and helping people move homes across every price range, actually, everyone has a different challenge, don't they? And we've noticed actually so much that many homeowners ask exactly the same questions, and they're quite
Mhm.
surprised by the answers, actually, sometimes. I was at someone yesterday, for instance, and they rattled off a list of things that they needed to do, and I was able to tick off half a dozen of those that actually didn't need to be done. And then ones
Yeah.
actually they hadn't considered that did need to be done. Because it's so easy, isn't it? You live in the home, so you see it every day, and you've got a judgment placed on each room, haven't you? So we're
100%.
kind of coming in cold and fresh and seeing it, I guess, pretty much through the eyes of the buyer, don't we?
Mhm, mhm. That's
So I
our
think
that is our view, it's our
mhm.
viewing.
hmm So for me, I think that's really great. And sometimes we have the same concerns as the seller, and other times we don't, as I say. So with that in mind, what the things that we do look at and what we've created is a real easy guide for you. Although there's 15 things we're going to talk about, they kind of fall into 5 camps, if you like. And that's to kind of help you navigate through the journey that you're going to be going ahead with. And those things include the love it or list it dilemma. Let's
Mhm.
be honest. We've all watched Phil and Kirsty. We love it, don't we? And we all sit and watch the programme and say, they're going to love it. They're going to list it. We all know what's going to happen, don't we? But it is a
100%.
dilemma that everyone faces. So for me, absolutely, that's something that you need to think about. The next thing for me, and this is the big thing, and this is the thing probably actually, Sophie, that we advise on the most, and that is the decoration, the
Mhm.
decluttering,
Yes.
which is massive.
Yeah.
Because actually some people can over declutter and others can under declutter. So it's trying to strike that balance, but also to do it in a way that makes it easy for you. And the other thing is DIY as well, because actually there'll be some DIY things that absolutely the seller is correct and do need to be done. And there'll be
Mhm.
other things where I will say, actually, I just wouldn't because it make no difference.
Mhm.
So, it's not necessarily that it won't make difference to the value. It's also about, well, how is the buyer going to see it? So that's important. And then the
Mhm.
third thing is weighing up whether to extend. And as you said earlier, perhaps actually love it and just stay. So we're going to talk
Mhm.
about that as well. Um, and then the fourth thing really is about how do you find your next home? Because you'll have a dream of what that is, or actually, you might not have a vision of what your next home looks like. But what you do know is you need an extra bedroom or you need a larger living space, but you've not really worked out what that looks like yet. So, again, we can
Mhm.
help with that. And then the final one, which is really the big one, once you've gone through all that other four and decided, it's about how you get yourself ready to sell, isn't it?
Mhm.
and
100%.
preparing for that, because that's the biggest thing. So deciding to whether you're going to move is obviously your first hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
Once that choice is made, really the real work begins for me, because what you're looking at then is diving into these 15 things that we're going to speak about. And if you have decided that you are going to sell and you're not going to love it, then how do you get moved in 2026 seamlessly and as stress-free as possible? Because we've all got busy lives, haven't we? We've all got jobs, we've got families, we've maybe got commitments looking after parents, things like that. There's so much going on in the world, isn't it? And actually, I see it quite often when I go out to my clients and we talk about it. They get to that decision point and then we say, right, well, what's the next steps? And you can actually almost see the fear on their faces, can't you, of what that next step looks like. And it's literally, you don't need to stress. These are all the things that are going to happen. These are the people that are going to take care of that for you. And actually, it's really quite seamless. But not everyone knows that, because actually, some people, you know, I've been out to someone that this week already who moved just 2 years ago, so they're comfortable with it. I was out to someone else who hasn't moved in 32 years. They're like, oh, this is so stressful for me, the whole thought of it. This has been my family home. I've raised my kids here. What does it look like? And actually are out of touch with the process, and it just feels a little bit overwhelming. So actually some of these tips I think will really help with that. So we're going to cover the first one, aren't we, Sophie? And that is the love it or list it one. So what does that look like as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, this is a good one to kick off with. And as Perrie mentioned, this obviously relates to the show, Phil and Kirsty, the love it or list it. And as Perrie says, when you kind of sat at the edge of your sofa being like, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? Are they not going to do it? You've perhaps been in that dilemma as well, where you really are undecided what to do. And it's the split between improving or selling, and then deciding what your next steps in life look like, what your property journey is, and really what your plans are for you, your family. So these are the things that you need to think of initially when you are at that stage, or love it or list it. And again, as I mentioned, sometimes just putting pen to paper and writing everything down, get a tally of costs, do pros and cons. First one, the cost of moving and everything that entails. It's your agency fees to begin with. Don't forget the conveyancing costs, and don't just assume that the conveyancing costs are in with your estate agency fees. You need to think that they are separate. And actually, what are the costs for both selling but also purchasing your next home as well? That's the cost that you need to do. But any solicitor will be able to give you a quote and a full breakdown of everything that entails. Stamp
And on that,
duty, or
actually,
obviously land.
just on that as well, though, about the solicitor giving you everything it entails as well. By this point, if you've also looked at what you think your budget is for your next home, you can even give your solicitor an estimate of what you think you're willing to pay for your next house, can't you, Sophie? And then they'll tell you how much that's going to cost to potentially purchase that next home, as well as selling your current, which is really vital, because sometimes people forget that part. You're right.
Correct, absolutely. They can work out that land and building transaction tax. Likewise, if you perhaps, and again, something maybe people aren't aware of, if you're actually loving and listing, but you perhaps already have a second home somewhere else or anything like that, you need to think about your additional dwelling tax. So they'll consider that for you as well. And then as well, removal costs. If you aren't planning to kind of bring up some favors and chum all your friends and family in and just promise them a takeaway, and you're actually going to do a full removal service, what does that entail? And get a quote for that also. And then when you think of all of that, that is a significant cost. And then this moving pot could cover all or much of the budget that perhaps your home improvements might take in that project. And especially when you think, and this leads on nicely to the next one about the staying and improving, yes, that avoids upheavals, especially if you perhaps have a young family and you don't have that. And we'll get this with clients, won't we, Perrie, where they want to sell, but the next property they're buying is perhaps a project. But actually, it's that much of a project, it's not safe to move into, it's not comfortable to move into, but they perhaps don't have that stepping stone in the middle. They can't just rely and say, oh, I can move in with parents, or I can move in with friends, or they perhaps don't have the resources to go and rent somewhere because they need that money for the project. So you need to think about that as well. If you are going to love it and list it, the property that you're perhaps purchasing, can you actually move into it as it is? Or what are you going to do in the interim? Because there is an upheaval to yourselves, to obviously if you do have young ones, because there is obviously going to be that element of disruption. So you have to consider that as well. And if you are considering that, and you're making a budget of time scale and how much that perhaps new property is going to cost if it is a bit of a project, maybe add a bit more onto the pound signs and add a couple more months onto your time scale, because it it never really goes to plan and you always go over budget and time scale gets longer. So factor that in as well. Because then you're going to have months of mess, builders' decisions to make. And obviously sometimes you can get that overwhelming feeling. And again, they mentioned it on the show, almost that like decision fatigue. And then you end up not knowing which direction to go, because it is down to everything from finishings, problems, layout, if you're perhaps changing configuration. And as I've mentioned, the cost management of that. So first off, think about your moving costs and everything that entails. What does that look like? Then look at, okay, staying in my home and the improvements that obviously is going to entail. And something that I haven't yet mentioned, if you are deciding to stay, is don't also forget the costs of if you need to get planning, if you need to get obviously consent, warrants, do you need to get an architect, do you need to get a structural engineer if you are changing the actual footprint and perhaps doing that extension. So it's all of those things as well. Don't just think about the actual building materials, it's everything else that comes with that as well. So they're your two big things, and that's a fantastic starting point, and then weighing up what the cost looks like for each. But I think something as well, Perrie, that you can't put a price on, and actually I was having this conversation with a client just on Monday, is the neighborhood and your location. You can't put a price on that.
It's a big part of moving, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is. And especially if you are in a neighborhood that you perhaps know, Sandra and Kevin across the street, or your kids have grown up with their kids there, or you've just got that community feel within your kind of location, you really price on that, because that is the unknown. Obviously, when you are moving somewhere, as much as obviously when we're out doing viewings, we'll get questions, what are the neighbours like? Do you know anything about the neighbours? We can give you an insight, but we've not actually physically lived there before. We can only go off what we've been told. So there is an element of the neighbourhood.
And there's a little bit of apprehension as well for the sellers. I was at a client the other day, and I'm due to do the pre-portal next week, and the first thing they said to me was, actually, before you even come with the photos and things, I've had to go and tell Neil next door, not his name, just a name I've come up with. And she says it was actually quite an emotional thing for both of them, because they lived next door to each other for 20 odd years. Their kids have grown up together. And actually, she said it was really emotional, quite sad and quite overwhelming to actually do that. And out of all of the decision process, the neighbour part was actually the hardest part for them. So there's elements that come into play actually that you don't perhaps even foresee are going to happen until you're in the moment, and then you start going through the checklist as you've mentioned, Sophie. So I think, yeah, it's quite an emotional journey, as well as it can be an expensive journey if you don't plan it properly as well.
Oh, 100%. And it is. And I would probably say for your client then, Perrie, out of everything that's been going on, it was probably at that exact moment when she had that conversation with a neighbour that it probably hit her that this is what was happening. She's probably been going through the motions, and yep. And it was only when she probably voiced it out and had that conversation with Neil, that she was like, oh, this is actually happening. That's probably when reality hit for her.
Yeah, and we get the reality hit as well when the board goes up.
Yes.
I often get that feedback. Oh, I came home from work today and the board was in the garden. That was quite emotional. You get that quite often as well, don't you?
You do. Absolutely. Absolutely. So neighborhood is a big one, and the locations, because obviously it's the social aspect, it's the community aspect, it's that peace of mind that people are looking out from you. So moving away perhaps might cost you more than money and obviously monetary value. But without those ties, you are free to obviously make those decisions. So ultimately, the choice does come down to whether your home has that physical potential to evolve. And also something we do want to speak about is, and we might obviously get to this as we go on, is don't extend if you still plan to move in 5 years and you're perhaps going to overextend and then put yourself where it's not going to be obviously viable and you're perhaps going to be at a loss. So do think about that as well if you're only still extending with the goal to perhaps move in 5 years, because you might not financially benefit from that. And without kind of that combination, if you are sitting there and obviously costs you outweigh, then it probably is time to list it and sell.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it leads us nicely on to the fact of weighing up whether or not somebody does want to extend, because that is a massive project. And some of the things you mentioned there are actually a applicable to this as well, aren't they? So, I mean, extending can be a brilliant way to do it. And I have gone out to clients and they've said, actually, we love the upside of the house. You know, upstairs works perfectly for us, but we just need more living space. And I've said, well, have you looked at the opportunity to extend? Because actually the cost to extend may outweigh the going to a larger property, because property prices have gone up, of course. And for all those reasons we've said, they love the location, they like the school, they don't want the kids to be moving away from their friends. So there's lots comes into play there. So a brilliant way to do that is potentially to extend. So you can create your forever home in your current home without having to move, of course. As long as you're invested in that and it meets all of your lifestyle requirements, because absolutely you're correct, Sophie. If the costs and the value add versus if you decide then to move in a few years' time, you probably will not get that return on the property. Extending is a long-term investment for me, and you're really building more value on your life that you're creating rather than the actual build itself, and the costs associated with that can be higher. So absolutely, it's something that I would only consider if you really are planning to stay there for some considerable time. So I think the thing to do there is to look at nearby streets for inspiration and perhaps potential builder recommendations. That's always a good thing, because you do get some horror stories out there where maybe someone has not used someone that has been recommended, and that can be costly in time, but also costly in pounds as well. So absolutely try to find someone that's maybe done something similar in your location and see who their builder was and were they happy, because that's a good place to start. It can help you see what the local authority is likely to approve as well. So, you know, you have to consider what they may allow, because whilst you might have an idea of what you would like to build, actually, is that viable, and will planning okay that? So again, that's something you do need to explore. And as you said, Sophie, earlier on, there's a cost associated with getting an architect, planning, permission, etc. So that's something you really do need to bear in mind. But if you do see something that has been done similar to what you're looking for in your location, get the builder's information, choose the decent contractor. If it's not those, they might know someone that you can use, because again, builders are really busy as well. So if you do decide to extend, this is not something you're just going to be able to do in a month's time. This will be something that is going to take probably a year before you break ground on it. So again, plan that on your timescales as well, and choose a decent contractor would be the big plus. Some extensions, like an extra bedroom over, say, a garage, for instance, or in the roof space, they obviously add clear capital value to a property, because they're not as personalised projects. You know, you've given an extra bedroom, everyone's going to need that. If you've given an extra bedroom with an ensuite, everyone's going to need that. And it goes back to what you said, Sophie, as well. It's about sometimes actually be really mindful about overextending and over personalising it. You have to keep in mind, eventually, at some stage in the future, you will need to sell that home. And does the layout work for another family?
And I think that's really important, and something as well to think about. And we actually had it with a property last year. Sold, not a problem. However, it was now a 4-bedroom home, but it wasn't when they purchased it. It was still on the plot of a 2-bedroom that extended it to a 4-bedroom, and the garden space that was left was hardly anything. So actually the feedback was beautiful home, lovely home, finished to such a high standard, but the garden doesn't equate to the footprint of a 4-bedroom, 2-reception, 2-bathroom detached home. It just, they were left with literally a bit of decking at the end of the day. The family that got it, that worked for them, because it meant they didn't have to do gardening. They didn't like gardening. They were like, this is a winner for us, brilliant. However, the feedback was it had been overextended for a family home, and the garden space didn't correlate.
And that's the key, isn't it? Because for families as well, if you think about it, a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-reception home is a family home. So the chances are there's 2 adults and maybe 2 children plus, and then dogs and everything like that. So they're going to need outside space, aren't they? But as you say, you know, you will find your buyer. It just might take a bit longer, but just be mindful of that when you are extending. It's crucial to think about what will that mean for you in the future, because circumstances do change, things happen in life, and you may need to sell in 10 years' time and you didn't plan to do that. Is it a viable property for someone else, and will it work? So don't over personalize would be my thing. But if as I say, it's just bedrooms and bathrooms that you're adding, maybe above a garage, then actually that's not overextending. That's a real good add. So absolutely look at those and how you're going to do that. And have a clear idea as well of the capital spends that you're going to make. So what you're going to spend to that extension, and is that viable, and does it add value to the property, or does it just add value to your lifestyle? And those are things that you really need to think about as well. The more personalised a project is, it may not always work. So check as well. A really great way to do that, and I had this conversation with a client the other day, is check with local agents as well, because an estate agent will give you honest answers, say, well, actually, I wouldn't do that because of whatever reason. I would maybe suggest you do this. So it's really important. So like you said, extending out into a garden and using up that space, if we'd maybe gone out there, we would have said, maybe not the best option. Our suggestion would be do a 2-story extension beside the garage, or a single story above the garage to add that bedroom and bathroom that you're looking for. There's ways that you can do it. So just seek some guidance there as well when you're in that planning stage. Because if you ask an architect to do your drawings for that type of extension, yes, they will do it. And yes, it perhaps will get approved, which that one did. But actually, what does it really mean in real terms for that home in the future? And that, for me, is a really big key. So definitely look at that as well. So use us, get some advice. That's a really good way to do it. But even if you don't build, having planning permission for me as well is also a good thing. So you can perhaps get your planning permission to add extras. I was at property yesterday. They have decided to take the conservatory away. They're putting a sunroom on. They've got a utility getting added. So all the plans are approved. They've now decided that they're not going to do that themselves. They're going to sell the property, but selling it with the planning permission as well is actually a bonus for your new buyer too, because at some point in the future they know that they can do that and get that additional space that they may not need now, but as their family grows, it's maybe something that they will need. So absolutely, if you are thinking of that and your house does get planning permission, it can place a lot of value when you do decide to sell it as well. So that's a really good thing to look at. It puts your house on the radar as well for other people perhaps who are quite happy to invest in doing the build, whether it's now when they first buy it or in the future. So for me, that's absolutely something to look out for, because then it kind of relates to wealthier homes as well. So it does add a bit of value to the property. So whether you build for yourself or you secure permission for your next owner, the key is ensuring that every extra square foot makes sense. It has to make sense, either for your lifestyle or eventually for that sale in the future, as I mentioned. Don't just extend for extending's sake. Make it make sense, because that's where your added value is if it works for everyone.
Yeah.
The next thing then really for me is the big one, which is the one that everyone feels overwhelmed with, is the decorating, decluttering, and also the DIY. That's a big thing, Sophie, isn't it?
100%. We speak about this so much, because it is all of those three really do come down to then the presentation of the home. And when we say presentation, we don't just mean inside, we also mean outside, and it's the curb appeal. And actually, I was actually thinking this yesterday. I was speaking with a client, I was valuing a property, and she'd done all this work to the house outside. And I'd said to her, "You've given the property so much curb appeal, it looks amazing." But she'd never actually heard of the phrase curb appeal. She was like, "What do you mean curb appeal?" I says, "Well, look, you've got now a character building. You've gone and done all the repointing. It looks like a sound building. It's cared for." Says anybody driving by now is going to actually, compared to every other property on this street, yours stands out. It has that curb appeal. But she'd never heard of that phrase. And she was like, I've had other agents out, and she was like, "You're the first person that's actually said that to me and actually spoken to me about that." And I was like, well, that's a great starting point, because then they're coming in and then they've got that confidence that it's been cared for, it's had the decoration, and it really does come down to the presentation, because it can be the difference between a buyer making the offer and also seeing it through right to the end, or perhaps disregarding the property and moving on. And when I say disregarding the property and moving on, that's without even viewing it. They might do a drive-by, as we say that clients do, or they might just look at the photos and go, "Oh, it's not for me." It could be in the best location. It could be done to the best standard, but actually it's just over cluttered, or it's just not had those final touches. So if you are going to sell and you want to sell for a premium price, then think about the whole picture that you are presenting, because that is absolutely key. And we can break it down into little subcategories just to make it less overwhelming for you. First one is think about your decoration. And when we say that, think about perhaps the color palette that you have used within your property. Yes, it was what appealed to you at the time and when you were living there and when it was your home, but your buyer needs to be able to picture themselves living in that home, not coming in and living in your home. They need to picture themselves in that property. So if you perhaps have a really bold, really striking, perhaps color palette, it might detract actually from the space of the room, or if it's got ornate features, or if it's got a beautiful view out the window, that really bold, striking color, perhaps is what's distracting people. A fresh coat of paint works absolute wonders for if you've perhaps got an area that has been a high footfall area and it's got scuff marks along the wall, or dirt where the dog's been running in and out, or something like that. Skirting boards as well. And actually see a fresh lick of paint, because 9 times out of 10 you've already got it in the garage or the shed or up in the attic or under the stairs. You've got it somewhere. But it's even then the smell. So when somebody walks in, they can smell that fresh paint. And it's like, oh, okay, this has been cared for, it's been maintained. And then giving it that fresh lick of paint straight away makes it feel bigger and brighter, and it just is more inviting. So really do think about the color palette. And this is something I had to have with a client. They were actually listed with another agent. The property wasn't selling for whatever reason, yet we've sold 3 homes in that development in the last 3 months. So we've had a fantastic result. But they delisted from the other agent. They're just coming on with ourselves. We're doing the marketing. But I said, look, there was 1 bedroom and it had a big, massive spaceship all over the wall, big, massive thing, dark. And as soon as you walked in, you weren't seeing how big the room was or the fact that it was so bright. Your eye was drawn to this big, dark navy spaceship on the wall. And I was like, look, you're moving anyway. It's obviously not going to be your home for much longer. I really think it's going to be within your best interest if we just minimize this a little bit. They had it painted over the weekend, good as new. He was like, it took me a couple of coats, Soph, and I was like, I can imagine it did. I can imagine, but then that's also a less pain point for your buyer or potential viewers. I need to come in, I'm going to have to paint that. How many coats of paint is it going to take? Is it even going to cover very well? That's all just been minimized. It's now just a really spacious and bright bedroom that's ready to move into. And it's all
It's really interesting. It's really interesting, isn't it, that we get different perspectives from the clients. I had a client the other day who actually has applied exactly what you said, unintentionally actually. When I went into the property and they were ready, I sat with them, we talked about their journey, and then eventually I said, right, okay, if you like to show me around, and they said, actually it's not really much to show you, we're quite neutral people, there's not really lots of colour or anything in the house. It was a new buildish property, it's only a 3-year-old house, but actually it was perfect that it was neutral. And that's what I said to him, this is actually fantastic, because people coming in can see the neutrality of it and how they can apply their own flair and their own inspiration of colour, versus you having really bold colours in all the rooms that they're thinking, oh, makes the rooms dark, that's a lot of work for me, that's a big expense, I'm going to have to completely redecorate, new carpets. But because it was neutral, it was actually quite a welcoming space, and all the soft furnishings were quite neutral, but it felt homely and it was warm and it was quite an inviting home. But they had a different perspective of that, and it just shows how you get that different view, isn't it?
100%. And that's why we say everybody is different, but if you can just make it as easy as possible for somebody coming in, that is the key. And then this is a big one, isn't it, Perrie? This is the big one. Decluttering. And obviously you were just speaking yesterday about you'd had to have that conversation with a client and be like, look, it's within your best interest. I'm better just being honest with you. We need to minimize. We need to declutter.
Yeah.
And it's such a big thing. And actually all it takes is time and just dedicating that time to just do it. But it has such a big impact because it's the mindset. As soon as somebody sees clutter or overwhelming spaces where it perhaps is that visual noise and visual mess, they just think there's not space in the property. There's no storage, there's no space. How am I going to live in here? It just doesn't work. So they automatically discount it just from seeing clutter. Because I've even had feedback before from a client where they've said, there's no way that person's moving out that house anytime soon. Look at how much stuff they've got to get rid of. they're not getting moved anytime soon.
Yeah.
And that is it. That is a bit, and it's just where the mindset naturally flows to, and it's where it goes to. So if you can do absolutely anything, it really is to remove all that visual noise.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all have it. We all have the junk drawer or the junk cupboard. We all have that one space. It is still your home at the end of the day, but
Mm.
really do think about shelves, especially if they're exposed shelves. Think about your kitchen worktops. That's a big thing. Likewise in your
Kitchens
bathroom,
and
if you have,
bathrooms. Yeah.
oh, you were just speaking about this yesterday, weren't you, Perrie? Where
Kitchens and bathrooms.
yeah, that's great if you've got your 7-step skincare routine and you've got all your lotions and your potions and you've got all of that. That's great because it is still your home. Not everybody wants to see that. And if that's all we can see when we walk in. So, Perrie, you gave a great solution yesterday when we were speaking about nip to B&M, cheap and cheerful, get a couple of little baskets, get some storage. You can obviously have it out, but put it away just so it's not there for the photography, the viewings, the video works, etc.
Yeah.
But kitchen bathrooms are the absolute biggie. Think about the surfaces and the space. Likewise as well, and actually we were having this conversation just last week as well, weren't we, Perrie, on the show about more and more viewers are opening cupboards and opening drawers and they're
Yes.
looking, especially in kitchens, because they're wanting to see, has it got all the little like integrated drawer pieces? Has it got all the little smart storage solutions? So if they are opening all these things and everything's jumping out at them and they're trying to catch things as it falls, it's not a great impression.
Mm.
So break it down, room by room, cupboard by cupboard, bit by bit, and just be a little bit ruthless with yourself, because if you can declutter it now and obviously get rid of it now, it's less for you to have to move. It's less to perhaps have to pay somebody to move, which again comes into the cost factor. So think
Mhm.
about that as well. And there'll be some people will hear clients say, oh, the attic's full, but I've not touched it, I've not looked at it, I've moved in. Will they get rid of it though? That's another question. They've maybe not looked at it, they've maybe not used it since they put it in the attic when they moved in, but will they actually be ruthless enough to actually get rid of it? That's the $1,000,000 question. Seems like a really, really big task, but just break it down bit by bit, and then it
Mhm.
really will help with those first impressions. It's a big
Really
thing.
does. Really does. And it opens up your space. And kitchens and bathrooms, as we've mentioned, are the two biggest factors because they're rooms that people spend lots of time in. So that's really important for them to be able to see the functioning space. And it also just gives a fabulous impression of the property as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And entrance hallways as well was the declutter place for me. People don't want to see racks with your smelly shoes on it and your 10 winter coats hanging up and your umbrellas and your stick for walking the dog. And people just don't want to see that. So if you can, just easy stacking situations, you can put them in crates, pump them into the garage, the shed or whatever, and then bring them back out again because you want to still live in the home. But you really need to maximize every single piece of viewing activity that you get and create a positive environment for them to view the house. We do have a link actually for the decluttering as well, which we'll put in this. So if you just click on that, it'll give you all of those easy steps on how you can begin it. And as Sophie said, it's take it stage by stage, do one cupboard a weekend even. It's not something that you need to spend a whole weekend blitzing your whole house in one. Just do it in progression, and then it won't feel such an overwhelming task. But click on the link and it'll give you all the details you need on how best to approach it.
Oh, 100%. And this is even something I've been putting into practice with my mum because she has so much stuff. And I was like, Mum, we need to do something about this. And it's even, as you've said, when you're coming in and there's coats and the shoes and the boots, we're obviously coming out of the winter season. So even something as simple as getting the vacuum bags, putting all your winter coats and everything winter and your heavy knits, get them out of the way, vacuum bags, and perhaps put them in the attic, put them under the bed, store them somewhere because there is
Yeah.
obviously that seasonal shift as well. And again, you can get vacuum bags in B&Ms for probably under £5, and they're such a great thing as well. So there is little quick wins, and it doesn't need to be expensive. And it is also something as well that if you are perhaps you wee ones have got too many toys and we need to declutter with kids' toys and things like that, get them involved, add a bit of fun to it just so that they can be involved and, do it in that sense. Don't just feel like you have to do it all yourself. There is other ways you can do it and get people involved. Say to your girlfriends, do you want to come round? I'll get pizzas, I'll get bits. Can you help me? We'll just try and add a bit of fun to it because then it seems less tedious as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the kind of last one of this kind of topic then is those little minor DIY jobs. that you've probably been had at the back of your mind for years, months, weeks, saying, I'll get to that, I need to do that, that's on my list, I will do that. Whether it be dripping taps, loose handles, the squeaky door, or even little things like you'll see, I was at a property and they'd done all new flooring, but they hadn't put the thresholds on. And it was like, oh, I need to do that. I need to do the thresholds. And yes, that's not going to add value to the property. We are 100% aware of that. But if you've gone to the expense to get brand new flooring and you've got quality flooring, just put the threshold on. It's just that final finishing touch, and it just stops anybody questioning things and looking like it's a job half done, because it literally is. So it's all these little minor DIY jobs. Even something that Jim spoke about when we did our spring campaign is he's got a real thing about grout, hasn't he, Perrie? And dirty grout. And he spoke about that with the DIY jobs. And how, again, it's just take a couple of hours, put yourself in the bathroom or the kitchen, wherever. Obviously, you've maybe got some grubby or just needing a little bit of a revival. But your grout as well is one of those minor jobs. But again, it's just what that tells your potential buyers and the story behind that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
And it is, because all these little things, it is those jobs that you've been putting off. But then somebody comes in and they pull all this together and they combine it together, it's then a list of potentially negative things. They don't see that care and attention. And then naturally, again, the mindset's a big thing. They go, okay, well, this is what I can see on the surface. What is there perhaps behind the scenes that I'm not aware of if all these little bits hasn't been done? And that is just naturally where people's minds go. So if we can avoid that.
That really is the key, isn't it? Because what you're doing, as you say, is that mindset, and you've got that kind of negative noise in their head and they can't see past that now. So actually, what seems like a really simplistic task is so worth you investing some time just fixing them, because you'll get such great rewards in the end, because then it's a positive, welcoming experience for someone who's coming to view it. And that, at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to create, because at the end of the day, you've decided to sell, you want to get a buyer, you want to get sold. And then it takes us on nicely, because actually what you're looking to do from there is find your next home, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely. So what does that look like, Perrie?
Yeah, so finding your next home requires a mix of realistic expectations, I would say, but also being market ready. So all of those things that we've just spoken about for me are absolutely paramount. You can't just decide today that this is going to happen. You have to be really realistic in your planning. Get yourself market ready. The best homes often go to those who have their ducks in a row, because they're ready to go before they've even started doing some viewings. And it's something that we constantly say to people about that preparation point, because that's how you'll secure your next home, the more you're ready. In the eyes of a seller as well, it's really crucial for them that buyers' finances are in place. So again, if you are thinking of moving home, marketing your home and then sitting saying, don't really know what we're going to do next, because we don't know how much we can spend, because we haven't, maybe they need a mortgage and they've not even spoken to a mortgage advisor yet, or their bank. You absolutely need to get your ducks in a row with that. So for a seller's perspective, they want to know that their buyers have got all of that in place. Otherwise, actually, you're not a true buyer in the eyes of that seller. So it really is important that you do that, and that you have that already in place, or at least have yourself marketed. If not, even better than that is being under offer, because again, then the seller's thinking, well, actually, you're quite ready now, and we're in a chain and someone's bought your house, and that's nice, we can make that work. But it is a priority for sellers to have someone that's in that position. They're either on the market, they're under offer, rather than someone actually that hasn't even begun their journey and is not ready. No matter how nice you are, no matter how much you praise the house, no matter actually even sometimes how much you may offer substantially more than other people that have offered on the same property. If your position is not that you're ready to go and you're on the market or under offer, chances are you're going to miss out on that. You need to get yourself absolutely in a position where you can move, can't you?
100%. And we do. We see it day in, day out. We really do. And then with finding your next home, then, would you say it's rare to find 100% of everything ticking your boxes?
I think it is, and some people can actually have an unrealistic tick list, can't they? And I think for me, and it goes back to what we said even about maybe selling a house with planning. Yes, it might not make all the needs now, but it can future make your needs. So for me, I would say you need to have some kind of compromise. And even if you take a property on, say that it's 80% of your boxes, that's a really strong starting point. And it's where you can actually achieve probably the best result for yourself. And the other 20% you can create through time, can't you?
Yes. Put
For
your own
me, that's
stamp
the
on it.
thing. And all those personalized tweets tick that other 20%. You know, if you go in and actually the ensuite needs reviving, but everything else works, is that a reason not to take that home? If you go in and everything works, the garden, the house, the number of rooms, the space, but actually the kitchen's a little bit dated, does that prevent you from buying that home? You can do an instant fix. You can go in, you can vinyl wrap it, spend maybe £1,500 vinyl wrapping it. It will feel like a new kitchen, one that you can live with for maybe another 3 or 4 years. And
Yeah.
be happy to do that and have that compromise, because the house is the right size, the location's the right location, the school's the one you want for your child to go to. So does it really matter if maybe there's a little dated ensuite, or you really wanted to have a garden room but there isn't one? You know, those are things that you can add through time, aren't they? But if everything else works, for me, you do need to have some flexibilities. Don't be so strict with yourself when you're looking at properties, because actually I have seen this happen where people are saying, oh no, it doesn't have this, doesn't have that, I'm not interested. They've viewed maybe 10 properties, they're not being flexible. And then I'll say to them, actually, do you know something? We've got one that's just come on. It's only a pre-portal. It's not been listed on the portals yet. I think it would work for you. And they've gone, and I know it's not ticking all their boxes. It's only ticking maybe 80% of it. And I've taken them to view it. And they've purchased that property and they've said, you know what, actually, if I had seen this on the portals, I wouldn't have requested a viewing. But it
Yeah.
really suits our needs now, and we can make that flexibility and we can make the changes we need to make through time. I'm so happy you've brought me to this house, because I would never have phoned up and asked to see it. So you've done us a real big favour by taking us to see this. So what you think is always that 100% for you sometimes isn't necessarily the case. So have that flexibility in your house hunt as well when you're looking for your next home. For me, would be a really big thing. I think as well, when you're viewing properties, it's good to keep your objections to things that you can't change. So
Yeah.
like the orientation of the garden. So if you're absolutely adamant you want a south facing garden and this is a north facing garden, then that house just doesn't work. So you have to be realistic in what you're looking at. If the local amenities and the connectivity, so by that what I'm talking about is your commute. Is it too far realistically from the train station? If you're not on the bus route, if it's maybe more country really than you wanted, those are things actually that in general you can't flex on because they're really crucial to your life. Whereas for me, you can sort everything else out, as I mentioned. You can change an ensuite, you can rewrap a kitchen, you can make those little tweaks, can't you? But you can't change what the house is. And, you know, we've had some people who said that, you know, oh, I love everything about the house, but if I could just pick it up and turn it around.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I will actually sometimes say to a client, if they've said to me when they've viewed it, actually, I really didn't like the kitchen. My question would be, right, okay, well, what didn't you like about the kitchen? Well, it's going to need a new kitchen, isn't it? You know, I like the size and, you know, it'd be great for dining and I could see my family there, but it needs a new kitchen. Okay, but would you need to do that now? Well, no. Okay, so if the client rewrapped the kitchen, would you be interested? Oh, well, yeah, well, maybe if they rewrap the kitchen, because the client might do that, you know, or if the
Yeah.
client doesn't, then, you know, we can negotiate in that, well, actually, that's a simple thing for you to do. So rewrapping a kitchen is minimal cost. So if that was done, or if you could do that for minimal cost yourself, would it then work? Well, yeah, it would work. So it's about just having that realization, isn't it? But if it's things where you go to see a house, you say, well, it doesn't have a garage. Okay, well, if there's room to build a garage and they built a garage, or you can build a garage in the future, would that work? Well, yeah, because I don't need it just now. Or if it's a house that there is no driveway, there's no possibility of building a garage, well, actually, that isn't the right house then. So, you know, there's some things you can't compromise on if they're very specific to you, isn't it? So I think for me, that's something that you really need to be looking into and understand what it is that you really need. So if you're moving out of area, why are you moving out of area? What do you need from that area? and build your house search around that, for me, is really good. But remember as well that, and it's something that I say quite often to people, not every home is what I would say oven ready, if you like. It's not the perfect thing when you get there. So there has to be compromise. But I think if you're prepared to make those changes yourself, if you're willing to be flexible, you can actually move much more quickly. And I think that's the key thing. The one just might not ever be there. Then actually, it might be the 90% one that you want. And those are the 10% things you can do through time. So it's a big move, and we get that. But it is about, taking the opportunities when they're there, especially if it's a particular location that houses rarely come up on.
Yes.
And there's one reason why you're just not picking it. And that reason can be fixed. For me, I think you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit there if you do that, because actually, if you do your homework, and we often say this to people, look at what's selling in that location, how frequently they're selling, what they're selling for, and what size they are. That'll give you a good guide as to what you potentially can have. But if houses only come up in that street once every 4 or 5 years, then you might just need to be flexible to get that one, because the chances are you're not going to get another opportunity to have one that fits your life at the moment. So, it might have been because you wanted the kids to go to that primary school, for instance. Well, in 4 or 5 years, they're going to be halfway through primary school. You can't change them then. So it's about having that flexibility for me as well. And not everyone has that. And it's about creating your own stamp in your own time scale, but getting the property that really is going to work for your family. And that's the thing you really need to have in your mind. Because if you don't, then you're actually going to be a bit stuck.
Really stuck. Absolutely.
Once you've kind of done that and you've got in your head what you're wanting, so you've done your decluttering, you've done your DIY, if there's anything there, you've decided you don't want to extend, you've decided you don't want to love it, you're going to list it. What do they do, Sophie?
Yep. So we're listing it and we're getting ready to sell. We are moving on in our journey. And it's fair to say a successful sale is rarely an accident. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's the result of all of that preparation, including what we've discussed. So thoughtful preparation. And then it really does stem down to picking the perfect selling agent for you and your property. And there are some really key things that you need to consider to maximize your chances of that smooth move, getting the best price, and actually it following through to the end. And that is the key as well.
Yeah.
If you've gone through all of that and you have done all of your homework and you've decided we are listing, is that agent actually going to get it over the line and actually get it concluded and get you moved on with your journey? And that is the key. And it really does start with choosing an agent based on their evidence, what they can demonstrate to you with their marketing strategy and proven results, and also their service standards. So do your homework. Look around and see what agents are not just got boards and have boards up, but are actually getting properties under offer, and perhaps how long they're sitting and then going under offer. And actually, when you've got that agent in front of you, if you perhaps are getting obviously some comparable kind of valuations and strategies, interview that estate agent. And this is something we speak about. Interview that estate agent, ask the questions. What can they demonstrate to you? Or have they just flown in the home, done 20 minutes around, asked you what you need, what do you think it's worth, agreed with you, and they're out the door? Have they actually sat down and taken the time to understand you, your property journey, what help you perhaps need and what you understand from this whole process, what your property needs to get the property sold, and then guided you through that process, and then really discussed in detail the full marketing strategy, because it's a case by case. Every property is different. It has its own quirks and features and location and price point and lifestyle. So what is the agent going to do to maximize that to get you the best results? And that's what you need to see. You need to see clear evidence of one, their strategy and their results, but also the valuation. And again, this is something we speak about, and it's about the price and what does that price look like in the valuation. Do not get drawn into overpricing or just agreeing with you for a number and not actually demonstrating it. And then also, what does the perhaps contract or seller's agreement look like? Is there anything in there that ties you in for, say, a fixed term? Really look at that in detail, and again, question it, but really don't fall into the trap of overpricing or just picking the highest number, because that perhaps could be a detriment to you in your journey. If you sit on the market, you don't get moved, you then perhaps have to realign. That does not help you at all, and it could end up actually costing you more. So really, really do think about interviewing your estate agent. Go on and look at their reviews as well. What review platform do they have? And actually, what are the reviews telling you? That is a big thing. So really do all your homework. And we have put a link in here so that you can go on and look at overvaluing tricks and traps on how to stop potentially spoiling your move. So that is an absolutely key one to do. But really do interview your estate agent is absolutely key. And I had that conversation with a client just yesterday without valuing a home, and it was stunning. They'd just done an extension. They didn't realize they were going to be moving, but hey, things happen. They'd just done an extension. It was in a fantastic location. The views were incredible. And the home was stunning. I actually said that to her. I was like, I can actually imagine just sitting here with the girls, a couple of picky bits, glass of. I was like, this is just incredible with those views. And she was like, you're the first one that's came in and actually been enthusiastic about the home. The last agent actually downsold it and actually didn't speak very highly of it because of it's not got a lot of garden space, for example, or anything like that. And she was like, it's actually really nice that someone's come in and actually can see everything that we've done and shown keen interest. And that is a big thing. They are selling your home. So really do think about your estate agent. Then with that, if you perhaps, and obviously we've spoke about extending or you've done works to your property, but if you are now deciding to list it, think about, have you got everything kind of ready for that? If you have done works, have you got completion certificates? Have you got all the warranties there? Have you got the certificates? Likewise as well, great things if you perhaps have just had a new boiler done, if you've perhaps just had no windows done, or if you perhaps had some works done to the property in whatever sense. Perhaps if you're in the East Nuke and you've had damp works done and they come obviously with a 20-30 year guarantee mostly. Have you got all of that paperwork? Because they are great things to be able to evidence and provide to potential viewers and your potential buyer. Instruct your solicitor, and this is something you speak about quite a lot, isn't it, Perrie, about instructing your solicitor, and actually don't wait until you've perhaps accepted an offer or you're in that stage. You really need to be instructing your solicitor at the same time that you instruct your estate agent, because they need to do all their due diligence on you. They need to gather everything, and they also need to factor you into their workload and everything else that they have. So they need to be aware of that. So do not leave it to the last minute. And if you perhaps don't have a solicitor, again, your agent should be able to provide or perhaps refer, and most likely are affiliated with a solicitor. So key is instruct your solicitor as well at the same time you instruct your estate agent. Then obviously, because you have your certificates, you have your warrants, you have your guarantees, they will also come really handy when your home report is done and you have to fill out the questionnaire part of your home report. There is a lot of questions on there, albeit some might not be relevant to you and your property because it does go out to every single property. There'll be ones that really are. So if you can have all of that information ready to hand, it stops any potential delays with the home report being completed and your listing going live, because you want to hit that marketplace to start getting buyers through the door. And finally, what would you say then, Perrie, about time and selling and what time to sell?
I think for me, while any time really is a good time to sell if you've got the right marketing strategy, isn't it? You know, the video work and being seen and the exposure that your property can get. But for me, the early months of the year tend to be the prime time to capture sales. Many clients will say, we're moving in spring, we're selling in spring. So spring is a really big opportunity for selling. And that's when we see a surge of property coming to market. So if you want to move and you want to move quick, and really you want to be moving by, can I say, summertime, you absolutely probably need to get yourself marketed just now. Your move can take months potentially to happen. And some people don't factor that in. Conveyancing in itself could take anything between 8 and 12 weeks. but you've still got to market before then, find your buyer, be happy with that buyer, and then the conveyancing commences. So if you think that through, you're already really into June if you're listing now. So absolutely, if you are deciding to move this year and your plan is to move by summer, I would say pretty much you probably need to be going to market just now. It's a great opportunity to get your property out there and listed. And it's a prime time of year as well, because people have prepared, they're kind of coming out of the winter months and they're now prepping their homes, getting ready to bring them to the market. So it's a really good time, A, for you to sell, but also for you to find something. So absolutely, I would suggest that you doing it sooner rather than later. Planning your property sale, for me, it takes a lot of care and it takes time. You don't want to be gambling about moving, so you absolutely want to follow all of these steps and get yourself aligned with what you're doing. A well-presented home with precision pricing, an agent that knows what they're doing and has proven to you that they've got a fantastic marketing strategy and they've got video work and they can get a real good stretch across the UK to demonstrate the value that your property has, really does create the premium conditions for you to get the maximum result, would be my guidance.
Amazing. So we've just given you a lot of information there on if you are going to be moving for 2026 and is it part of your plans? Are you going to love it or are you going to list it? So you can obviously go back, you can read through the blog. There is also the helpful kind of sublinks in there for further blogs. But if there is anything at all that we can help you with, or even if you want to share some of your own hints and tips, or even your own case studies where you were in that limbo and didn't know what to do, and you went either way, and obviously, did it work for you? We would love to hear from you. Share it with us, and we will absolutely come back to you. But I think the key that we can take away from this, Perrie, is be prepared and do your homework. That would be the key and my final words.
Perfect. Excellent. Lovely. Well, thanks everyone. That's it for another week from us. Take care.
All the best.